In the year 732 AD, someone is sitting at a desk copying books. Let's find out why these people are so important. He has been awake since 4 a.m. because that's when his rooster crows to wake him up so he can tend to his bees. He grabs a reed stylus from his bag and takes it with him on the journey. This is the time of day when most people are traveling, and the scribe might need to ask a question or two if he comes across a word he doesn't recognize or needs clarification on a passage. It's not a quill just yet, but more on that later. Then he dips one end of a quill into it, ready to write. Quills were simply bird feathers that had been cleaned and shaped, usually taken from the left wing of a goose or swan. Though occasionally eagle or crane feathers were used for especially important documents, it takes him about half an hour to finish a page, but it's meticulous work and many errors can happen. Sometimes a word is misspelled or even a whole line is written wrong. When this happens, the scribe must dip his quill into a special white ink and cross out the mistake. Then he writes the correct version of the word or phrase. Occasionally he may even have to resort to using a knife to scrape off the words, which is only allowed on the cheaper papyrus pages. They were so valuable that specialized workers called notaires existed just to make them, and the scribe carries one with him always. First of all, they were responsible for copying down practically everything. For example, in 1455, a scribe copied the last page of a papal bull granting Henry VIII a divorce from Catherine of Aragon. If a word or phrase was misspelled, they could simply cross it out and write the correct version. Of course, this didn't always work. For example, in 1536, a scribe was copying the Gospels of Matthew and accidentally wrote the name of Jesus, Father, as Joseph instead of God. The mistake was so big that even crossing it out and rewriting it would have ruined the page. So instead, he did something drastic. He cut out the misspelled word with a knife and then glued a piece of parchment over it. It is a miracle that any of the Bible survived in its original form, given how much tampering scribes did to it. But thankfully, this story is an exception rather than the norm. The scribe accidentally put the Pope's seal in the wrong place, which meant that technically the document wasn't valid. This wouldn't have mattered so much if the document had one day gone on to start the Protestant Reformation, so you can imagine how big of a deal it was. This included official letters, legal documents, books, and even pictures. Sometimes they would add their own commentary to what they were copying, which became a significant source of historical information. They helped preserve ancient texts and make copies of books, which allowed knowledge to be shared around the world. Without them, we would have lost countless works of literature and history. Even today, historians are discovering new information by reading the notes of old scribes. In this case, he will put a small circle around the unknown character and then write a rough approximation of how he thinks it sounds. Then once he finishes a page, he will go to the boss monk or priest in charge and get the correct spelling before continuing his work. He spends the rest of the day copying letters and then finally puts his quill down as the sun sets. All in all, he wrote about 10 pages today, which isn't bad considering that each one is about 8 inches by 5 inches. He has about 200 hives on his property, and taking care of them gives him extra income as well as something to do while thinking about the day ahead. Once he arrives, he eats dinner with his family and then gets ready to sleep. The boy dreams of being a scribe when he grows up. But for now, it's time to sleep. His job is solitary, so he's happy to chat with the others. He hears about some recent events and gossip and then talks about his home village. He misses his family and wishes he could see them more often, but his work keeps him busy. So it's 5:30 a.m. and our scribe is getting up. Together they have a prayer and then begin their daily tasks. Today the scribe will be making copies of some old letters from the king to various lords around the empire. He could also use papyrus, which is made from reeds found in marshes, but in this case, the imported papyrus is too valuable to use for mere letters. But in order to do this, he first has to prepare his supplies. After tending to his bees and bathing himself, he dresses in his finest tunic and travels into the nearest town where he works as a scribe for the emperor. As he walks through the town, he passes by merchants, smiths, and farmers. Finally arriving at the royal library, he enters and greets the other scribes and monks who work there. For ink, he mixes soot and water together, though sometimes a special type of squid ink would be imported from Egypt. Next, he gets a piece of parchment, which is prepared animal skin that will serve as the page for the letter. With everything ready, the scribe begins his work, dipping his quill into the ink and writing. It is also possible that during his work, the scribe may come across a word he doesn't know or isn't quite sure of the spelling. It's about noon, and the scribe is taking a break. The afternoon goes by quickly, and soon it's time for him to get back to work. He gathers up his things and leaves the library. As darkness falls, he makes his way home, stopping to visit his beehives along the way. Before bed, he tells his son about his work as a scribe and shows him his fancy quills. Now let's talk about why scribes like this were so important to history. But unfortunately, sometimes scribes made mistakes, and when they did, it could have major consequences. But fortunately, scribes were able to fix their mistakes, which saved a lot of important documents from being ruined. And in the end, we have a lot to thank scribes like this for. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe for more videos like this. Special thanks to my supporters. You help to pay for the beehive.